The sage Vasishta has been meditating somewhere in deep outer space for 100 years, and when he came out of his meditation he encountered a celestial lady. And we're going to hear about her now. This might seem very far removed and a bit science fiction-y, but like the best science fiction, it actually addresses our own situation very pertinently and very dramatically. So, with that in mind, let's press on. Asked by Vasistha who she was, the celestial replied, "O sage, in this vast universe, in a corner, you have the world in which you live. Beyond the boundaries of this universe are mountains known as the Lokaloka mountains. That region has every form of climatic and elemental permutation and combination." I think there's something significant about the name here, Lokaloka. I'm going to speculate a little. The word loka is where the English word location originally comes from. Location, locus, a position, a place. And this word loka originally derives from a word meaning to shine or to be visible. It's our situation basically, and usually when you have a word repeated, although it's not strictly the same word as repeated, it's emphasizing that. It's emphasizing the place, it's emphasizing the situation, or even the reality of your location. So that's a little speculation here about the name. It's the feeling that your place is the place, it's real, your location. And it's mentioned by the translator that the description of this place, this region, is elaborate and interesting. So I think he must have edited it somewhat. Somewhere in it only humans dwell, elsewhere gods dwell. In it there are goblins, as also very long-lived beings. In it there are self-luminous places, and others of utter darkness, fertile fields and deserts, densely populated places, and uninhabited areas. In other words, it's really not much different from the traditional understanding of somebody who was alive at this time. It's worth considering our relationship with the world around us. We've got a unique one now, an unusual one, which has not only been informed by modern science, but by certain assumptions which sprang from the Middle East, mainly in the form of the Judeo-Christian understanding. Our ancestors wouldn't have believed in a universe which consisted mainly of empty space. It was a world inhabited by all sorts of creatures, angels, divine beings, saints, devils, demons, goblins. These things were very real. We might dismiss it as imagination in retrospect, but in the past these things were real. We like to think, as we dismiss the understanding of our ancestors, that we've got a better understanding. We are scientific. And even if you're a religious person, whether you're a Muslim, Christian or whatever, you probably still subscribe to the scientific point of view that we're living on a planet orbiting a sun, and that there's a lot of space out there, the vacuum of space. You might find this a rather wonderful picture, or you might find it a rather cold and sort of slightly depressing picture. But this is what informs part of our sense of who we are. And we should bear that in mind. How you think of the universe is how you feel about yourself. It's a very intimate connection. So what we've got here is a very traditional description. It's not one that's filled with empty space, it's one that's filled with all sorts of beings, all sorts of landscapes, all sorts of varieties of conditions. I dwell within a solid rock which lies on the northeastern slopes of that mountain range. So this is unusual, she's dwelling within a rock. The translator makes the point later on that we are actually dwelling on a rock, the third rock from the sun. But I think the emphasis here is that they're actually inside the rock. She's actually living inside the rock. I am bound by destiny to live within the heart of this rock. I have thus lived in it for countless eons. My husband too is destined to live here. Till today we have not been able to attain liberation on account of our intense desire. And the word here is kama. And on account of our intense attachment for each other. Similar is the fate of our relatives. So this world exists inside the rock, and the fact that she's long lived is significant. My husband, who is thus in bondage, is a Brahmana by birth. He is ancient. He does not move from his seat, though he has been sitting there for countless centuries. He is a celibate from birth, educated and lazy. He lives in seclusion, as he is not moved by craving for pleasure. Being his wife, I lead a miserable life, yet I cannot live without him even for a single moment. So this might seem strange that in the previous paragraph she said that they've not been able to attain liberation on account of their intense desire, their kama. And now it seems that he's a celibate, educated and lazy, living in seclusion. He's not moved by craving for pleasure. So there seems to be a contradiction here, doesn't there? In traditional Indian society, the pursuit of kama was a perfectly viable approach to life. We have the Kama Sutra, which is sometimes understood as a sex manual. Kama is sometimes understood as lust. But if you have a look at the Kama Sutra, you'll see there's a lot more to it than sex. It's also about culture. It's about pleasure and sensuality in the wider sense of the word. And Kama can also apply to intellectual pursuits. In fact, in the West we often make a distinction between the mind and the body, and pursuing mental pursuits is somehow more noble than pursuing the pleasures of the body. But it's all kama, it's all desire. Whether it's desire for physical pleasure or desire for intellectual pleasure, desire for understanding, it's all desire. And this Brahmana, although he's not described as a yogi, he seems to be a kind of yogi, and perhaps he's pursuing a higher kind of pleasure, but it's still desire. And he's obviously attached to his wife, although he doesn't seem to have any desire for her, which is a problem. We'll hear about that in the next video.